Hey there, welcome to episode 8. Let's innovate for Vegas. Today it is all about open transit as soon as possible. Why? Well, pardon my allergies, it's that time of year. I'm sure you're enjoying some as well. We are going to talk about our open transit project today, mostly because it is the project we are aiming to launch in May. Hey, it's April 14th. Why are we talking about this now? Because that is how software works. Takes a while. We actually started this a year ago, and it was our first project, and that's where we're going to start today. It was a little bit of history of this project, as it was the very first one. It was the first hackathon we had. It was the first engagement with a local agency, the RTC, the Regional Transit Commission. We met with Jesse Diaz. We talked to him about our ideas and our goals. I subsequently, be nice if I could speak, had a meeting with Jesse for about 3 hours. We went through some of our architecture and our goals and our project ideals. And these are things that will become apparent in the near future once we roll things out. Actually have a couple of people working on this project now, which has been a challenge over the last 1 year. I think it's like exactly 1 year. I'll check the calendar, which is another project that I will tell you about next week. But we are proactively engaged. What I've done, I myself am a consumer of public transit services. I ride the bus. I sold my car. I think it's coming up on 7 years. I used to try 7. It might be 6. Whatever. It's more than a year. Used to not drive. I used to travel a lot when I was working for Intel. I was on the road like more than I was here, certainly. When my car was sitting for 7 months, it needed to be smogged, new insurance, registered, the whole nine, dead battery. So I figured, why am I keeping this car if it's only a cost center now? It's not actually doing anything for me. I mostly took the bus to the airport anyway. You'll have to pardon me while I have a little bit of tea there. So I sold my car, and I've been a bus rider ever since, and I was doing that when I was traveling, so it wasn't a big deal. And I figured, I'm gonna see how I can get around without a car and not deal with parking and theft and burglary and vandalism and all the other joys of vehicle ownership here in Las Vegas. So that was my personal entry into our transit system here. And I'm from back east, where there is a real transit system, the Port Authority and other bus systems, subways, etc. So getting around the Manhattan boroughs, the boroughs of New York, the various boroughs, Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn. And I lived in New Jersey when I was young, and every time I went back, it was always kind of fun to jump on a subway, get somewhere, or see how far I could get to Hackensack to get some crumb cake. We know what I'm talking about, so I won't bore you with those details. But it was fun to do that, whether I was in Ireland on the Dublin bus, or in Italy on the train and the light rail in Turin, or France. It was the light rail / subway, almost like a Muni a Muni train you might find in San Francisco. And so getting around in public transit is actually it's completely possible to do. And one of these days, I would love to have Ray Delahanty on. He is a transit planner who retired here in Vegas. I believe he's been car or carefree for 10 years, if I recall. So that was our motivation for just starting off, was a tangible project that will have real, measurable value for people here in Las Vegas, whether they're locals or visiting. Every single person I've ever talked to who uses our public transit, whether they do it every day or they're here for a couple days for a show or a conference or just visiting, there is always some sort of an eye roll or a shrug or a sense of disappointment. And when you speak to someone who doesn't speak English, double that. Most of our transit system is based on someone who speaks English. They touch on Spanish, some of the signage, but mostly you're on your own. We live in a modern world. Language translation is a done deal. Now we have various AI, generative learning, and so on. So there's no reason we can't have some sort of an interface for people who do not speak English to be able to make use of our transit system here when they're visiting. We do have quite a few visitors from out of town, and they don't always speak English. So that was our very first hackathon a year ago. in so doing, we looked at what works and what does not. And that is going to be a common theme in a lot of the things I work on in Las Vegas. If you follow any of the Cafe Genius projects or undertakings, you're going to hear that a lot. So what works? Let's start there. Let's start with the good news. The buses run. That's always nice. That wasn't true when they had their hiring shortage. They couldn't hire drivers, and so the buses would just disappear off the schedule. They just wouldn't show up. So mostly they run. We'll see as the summer approaches if the air conditioners run. But the buses have been running. I would say for the 2023 calendar year thus far, maybe one bus hasn't shown up that I was hoping to jump on. So that's pretty good. It's better than 2022. It was a little bit more common. So we have buses that run. That's always nice. The RTC publishes on their developer page incomplete but yet findable GTFS data. GTFS is the General Transit Feed Specification. It allows people like us to grab actual data, authoritative information about stop locations and trips and schedules and alerts and so on. We can take all that information from the schedule data. It's called schedule in the GTFS spec. It's sometimes also called static because it's not supposed to change too often. So we can grab that data, and then there's a real-time feed. And if you've ever seen on Google Maps or if you use the horrendously bad transit app or maybe some other outlets, you'll see that they can show where buses are in motion. They're on the map, where they approximately are in almost real time, approximately. So that feed, the real-time GTFS feed, is also available from the developer page. It is built and maintained by a company called Swiftly. Swiftly does public transit telemetry and analytics, and they do all kinds of software related to public transit, which is wonderful. It'd be cool if they were here. I think they're in California. As it happens, the co-founder and current CEO is a Harvey Mudd graduate, some years after I graduated from Harvey Mudd. So I know he's smart, possibly smarter than me. We'll find out. I kid. So there is intelligence backing the Swiftly effort, and they do a reasonable job. There's a lot of data coming in from each bus. Each and every bus is transmitting telemetry all the time, or unless it isn't. And so they assemble that GTFS data, the schedule, and the real-time feed updates every 30 seconds or so, give or take. So there's a whole mess of data about each and every bus, every route, everything, always updating. It's very nice. And we can use that data available from the developer page as long as they maintain it, which they have no policy for or about. But as long as the RTC continues to publish that, we can build our tools and services on top of it, which will be nice. So we have running buses, and we have a way to measure where they're supposed to be and where they actually are. And that's a good start. That's all we need. Okay, there's some bad news. Certain things do not work. I'm going to take another drink of tea real quick because this is a longer list. Alrighty, let's get this one done. Now, I'll remind you, I am a transit user. I've used public transit in many cities: Bay Area, Washington, Oregon, New York, New Jersey, Denver, probably more. I can't remember right now, but I used to travel a lot for work, and I used to try to I definitely avoided taxis. I never rented cars because I was never really using a car enough to deal with that. So I would try to avoid the Lyft and Uber thing if I could. Sometimes that was inescapable. But whenever I could, I would try to use public transit, just because I have found in my travels, that when you travel and you don't have to pay attention exactly to the roads and trying to figure out which streets and intersections and the local driving customs and whatnot, you can focus on, what time do I have to be there? What time do I have to find the bus stop and then get to it? And so these are things that can move a little bit more slowly, and you can actually look out the window. You can check on your phone or your other mobile device while you're in transit. So I've found it to be, and it's only gotten easier to do that stuff over the years. When I first went to Dublin, I didn't have a map. I I didn't have my cell phone set up to work in Ireland. The roaming fees were ridiculous. Remember roaming? Yeah. Today, we have no such trouble. So getting around in public transit is actually kind of fun. You can let the driver do the driving, and you don't have to deal with a Lyft and an Uber waits, and you just go to a place and you get on a bus and you tell them, I'm not from here, and they're usually very helpful, which is nice. Not here in Vegas so much. About 50-50 chance of that. Okay, I've digressed. Let's see if my voice will cooperate for this list. Let me take one more sip of tea. All right, so what does not work? Some of this is editorial, but some of it is actually practical. I'll just start. Knock it off. The estimator. The estimator tells a person waiting for a bus approximately when that bus will be there. There are some subtleties there. Does the transit app or does Google, are they showing you the departure time or the arrival time? If you know a bus is going to arrive at a bus stop at, 1 minute past the hour, and it's showing you 1 minute past the hour on the arrival or departure, wait, which is it? The schedule times are usually departure from the stop. So if a bus arrives, it's supposed to depart by the posted schedule time. Why does that make sense? Because if the bus can depart by then, you should have been there by then. If the arrival time is shown, when should you be there? You should be there sometime around the arrival time, but if you know it's departing, that's when you have to be there, right? It's a subtlety, but it actually makes it very clear that the bus is leaving. You should be on it, not the bus is getting there, and you should be near where it's going to be. So if there was some consistency in the way that information was shared and displayed and updated, the rider may benefit. That's one of our experiments. So the estimator, though, will tell you approximately what the real arrival and arrival time is, right? So the estimated arrival time, because you cannot estimate a departure time, the estimated arrival time is based on whether the bus is running late, if it's moving slowly, right? If it's not moving at the posted speed limit, if it's in traffic, maybe there's a detour, maybe there's just a delay. Could have been rider access issues, getting on, getting off. It could be very busy, could be packed. Any number of things can cause any route, any bus, any driver, anything can be running late. So that's fine. As long as you're not a passenger trying to get to that bus, you better be on time. But if the bus is running late, then the estimator will give you some idea when it's arriving, not when it's departing. So here's a conundrum. If I give you an estimated arrival time and the posted departure time is before that, the bus is late. So the bus doesn't necessarily have to stop, even if it's a timed stop. A timed stop is one that's shown on the schedule with a time next to it. That means it's supposed to stop at the BTC or the SSTC, I think it's called, the South of the Strip Transit Center. Yeah, so the bus is supposed to stop. If it doesn't stop, it's because it's running late. And if it's running late and nobody's there, even though the estimator says that the bus is still coming, you better be at that stop already because the departure time is already gone. So there's a transit app bug where that bus may actually just roll right up off the top of the display for arrival times because they're actually departure times. So I'm doing this on purpose to show that it's ridiculous. But the departure time can be in the past. The arrival time can be in the future. And that's where things get a little weird because as a bus rider, you may have been on a bus that was running late and you are trying to catch a bus that is also running late. But because you are not yet at the bus stop and it is running late, it doesn't have to stop. So you might miss your bus because the buses are late, even though you're trying to be on time. It can be frustrating. And being clear about those things to riders will help, especially if they're visiting from other places that have bus systems that run more closely on time or who are more rider-centered, not schedule-centered. So that's a little editorial. Phantom buses. Phantom buses happen all the time on the Strip because the Deuce, your favorite double-decker bus that I ride frequently as well, so I've probably seen you on there, and the Deuce doesn't actually have a schedule. It's not actually late or early. It just runs when it runs. If you've ever seen two Deuce buses show up at the stop at the same time or one pass another, totally normal. So because the Deuce is not scheduled, it can show up or not. But because the telemetry data and then there's no schedule data, right? So the telemetry data is the basis on which you can make these estimations. And occasionally the telemetry data will be shown or displayed on a map or on an estimated arrival time, not departure time, based on a bus that's not actually moving, or that is not going to be showing up, or that I've had occasion where it's not even a deuce and it's the wrong bus, but it shows up as it's going to be a deuce and then it gets there and it's not. So the estimator and the phantom bus problem kind of combine together to make for this is a city built on gambling, right? So you're never quite sure what you're going to get. The phantom bus problem has made itself apparent to me. Anecdotally, I have been on buses that just show up at a stop. A 60-foot articulated bus one time showed up, doors open. I said, you're CX North? Yes, I am. Bonus bus. I said, oh, not on the schedule. Okay. Got on a 60-foot bus by myself, and I was the only one on the bus all the way up to Centennial Hills from downtown. So this happens. Who knows how much, when. You'll just get a bus and you jump on whenever you want, I guess. So that was a phantom bus, not on the schedule, didn't show up on any map, no telemetry data shown. It just showed up. So these are operational issues because that costs money. If there's a driver shortage and you got drivers driving around in empty buses, well, that's math we can touch on another time. Not every person getting on a bus has completely 20/20 vision and completely using adverbs wrong. Not everybody has 20/20 vision. Not everybody has perfect hearing. So when you are on the vehicle, you may not hear the announcement, the automated announcement saying that there's the next stop is coming up. You may not be able to see the app screen. You may not be able to see anything. I have spoken with passengers who have these issues. They're unable to use the transit app, which is not accessible. It's a horrible use of low contrast, weird color codes without explanation, not localized, which is another point I'll make. So we have tools that are not built for the people that are needing the bus. The people who need a bus are probably not completely 20/20 certified to drive in a car, right? They may have vision, or they may have hearing issues, they may have other maladies. Well, not getting any help from the transit app. So that's something we actually want to tackle specifically. An accessible, if you've ever heard our 3-word ethos, it's inclusivity, diversity, and accessibility. The accessibility applies not only to our events and our projects we're working on, it works for people using our stuff. We want to make our software and our other projects, any hardware or any creative works, we like to make them to the extent that we are able and that they can be accessible. So a person who is vision impaired or who can't hear or can't move around quite as easily should be able to use all of these tools. And guess what? If you talk to those people while they're using your tools that you've developed, you get some feedback and you can make them better. So I'll get to that in a sec. So mobile only is another problem. The transit app is mobile only. Google Maps you can use on your computer, web browser. Why can I not use a proper transit tool anywhere I need it? Well, nobody asked me. Oh wait, we can, because people have asked me, and we're going to do that. So our project is going to be web-based, mobile web application, PWA if you like, progressive web app, nothing to install. There should be no friction. If you want to get on a bus, you should be able to get on a bus. You should be able to ride the bus and know where you're going. So that's our goal, not go to an app store, try to install an app. Sorry, you're using the wrong kind of phone, or the problems. The problems are many. So you should be able to use these pieces of information that are available on a platform of your choice, translated in a language that you speak, and web-based translation has already been done, decades. And you should be able to change the way the application looks to suit your visual or auditory needs. Accessibility for web applications is a done deal. WAIARIA, W-A-I-A-R-I-A. W-A-I-A-R-I-A. So WAIARIA is already done deal. So all you have to do is make sure your mobile web apps pass WAIARIA checks, and you have the basis of an accessible web-based application for people to get around our city. And by city, I mean Southern Nevada, because City of Las Vegas and our bus system are intersectional, but they are not exclusive. So, fun fact. Rider feedback. If you want to tell RTC that there was an issue with your ride, whether it was good or bad, what if I want to say this driver was awesome, which has happened? I have encountered some very fine, very helpful, very pleasant, cheerful, jovial, cordial. You name all the good adjectives, and they probably apply in some way or another to many bus drivers I've encountered, including the security people at the various bus stops, including some of the people that work at the transit centers, BTC downtown, SSTC. They're generally helpful. They're very nice. They're doing their job. Wonderful. Can't tell anybody that, though. Very difficult. You have to get their contractor number or some other identifying information. You have to make a phone call. You have to figure out how to get in touch with the person to give this feedback, and they probably won't know what you're talking about. You can try submitting it over Twitter or some other social media. That's going to be about a similar experience. Probably nothing will come of it. You're supposed to use the Transit Watch app. So let's look. Let's review a couple of things. If you want to buy a bus pass or figure out some basics about getting around, you can get the Ride RTC application on your mobile device. If you want to figure out where buses are at any given time, you can use Transit app, which is horrible. I call it the Travesty app. If you want to report a problem at a bus stop or with a driver, or even give some good news, give a compliment or a kudos to a driver, you got to grab that Transit Watch app. That's the third one. If you want to do paratransit for any reason, that's another app. If you want to do the Ride carpool benefits program, I don't know how they couch it, but it's Club Ride. That's a different thing. That's another one to install. And then if you want to, there's one more I can't remember now. How many apps is that? That's too many. So by going web first, let's cut down on the things you have to install and deal with and update and that aren't localized and aren't accessible. And let's make this a nice unified experience so you can do what you're supposed to do, which is get from A to B, not figure out which app to install and what to click on and whatnot. And I've tried to help people with this countless times. Notifications. On the 29th of January, there was a major schedule change. A lot of buses, a lot of routes had an impact. I will tell you my story. The CX, the Centennial Hills Express, had a weekday adjustment. It was earlier by, I think, 6 or 7 minutes in the morning. Not totally apparent because there was just schedule change announcements, not like... well, if you're using the transit app, it should say, oh, you ride the CX bus all the time. You should know this. But no such help. So I missed one of the buses going to the airport. That was fun. I missed it by like 3 minutes. I watched it leaving, and the bus driver waved at me. Like, the schedule literally just changed. Sorry, no help for you, Dan. So that was fun. I've seen even today it's April 14th today, just this week, there was a person riding the bus speaking Spanish as her first language, was not totally on top of which bus, what time, which route, which trip. So she ended up getting in the wrong direction at BTC. She was up in Centennial Hills. Now she's got to get back, and the driver was not helpful. That was a bummer. I actually felt quite bad. And so I don't know if I have my I'm helpful or I know how broken this is hat on all the time, but she asked me if I speak Spanish. I said un poquito, and we worked it out. And I got her basically headed in the right direction and how to get to where. So these are not hard things, and we can use the technology we have in our pockets. So rider feedback, like I said. So any opportunity that rider or anyone would have to give some feedback about confusing schedules or broken bus stops or dangerous bus stops or bus stops that smell like urine or drivers that smell like urine or are mean or not helpful or who are not mean and who are definitely helpful. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. We should be able to feed that information back. And guess what? We should make that public, because if there's a problem and it's submitted in a weird app that nobody ever sees or hears about again, and you never get an update and it's, well, did it happen? I've done this. I've tried all these things. Everything I've said today during this podcast, I have experimented with, I've tried, I've tested, and that's why we're working on this project. So the list goes on. There's a lot of things that don't work here. So the Club Ride thing is strange. Why is it not integrated into the general rider workflow? User feedback, like I said, the rider should be able to say when there's a problem, when there's a bus that's late. The transit app has some maybe useful. I'm trying to find a nice word, but maybe useful features that can enable a rider to report where a bus is using their device GPS. But there's a whole bunch of stuff left on the table as far as how we do bus passes, how we measure where bus stops are, who's taking which routes where, how we handle and try to work around bus delays, detours. We are a city built on ever-changing roads and always detoured routes for everything all the time. And it gets worse when there's a rock and roll marathon or a F1 or a Super Bowl or who knows what. So getting around the city, especially if you need to get around, should not be taken lightly. And so, hey, it's our first project, Open Transit. And by the way, Open Transit could be a command, Open Transit, hence the title, Open Transit ASAP. So what are we doing? We, the Innovative Vegas Foundation, we're a nonprofit, by the way, public charity. You can donate and support us. We are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I take no salary. I get no pay. I don't even get, let's just say it costs me money to participate. So volunteers are taking on the challenge. We have local innovation taking place by people who actually use public transit or who care about public transit. So whether they're on the bus themselves or they have a connection to someone who is using it, this is one of the things that people can do when they live here, when they're locals, is that they can take part in fixing or addressing or improving the things around us because it will impact them directly or indirectly, or people they know, care about, love, respect, admire, all those things. I know one or two people like that here. So what we can do, though, is because we are here, we are not in California where Swiftly is, or Montreal where Transit App is, or who knows where these other companies are. Ride RTC, I think, is Just Ride, Masabi. I don't know if they're in California, but they may be in Canada. Who knows? But guess what? If everybody doing this stuff is in Las Vegas and they all hang out at the Innovation Center downtown and they're riding the bus, chances are if you're riding the bus, you'll run into one of us and you'll say, hey, this app you guys built, it runs on all my devices. I don't have to install anything. It's just like a website, and I go there and it tells me the correct information. And when I have a problem, I report a bug and then it's fixed. And we'll say, yeah, because we're sitting next to you and we're using the same tools and we want them to work for us and you. And when you tell us something doesn't work, we say, oh yeah, look at that. And we fix it. That's how that works. That's co-creation in action. So by having local innovation take place by local innovators, we don't have to hope and pray that someone in another state who doesn't really care about us will maybe get around to it someday. Kind of blew that punchline. Sorry. So as we deploy, we can make use of the co-creation relationships that we develop and have people checking out our stuff, tell us what works and what doesn't. I just went through a list of things that work. That's wonderful. And that do not. That's not so wonderful. I have attended webinars about public transit, the state of public transit, about how Transit App works. I've tried to submit problem issue reports and whatnot. Yeah, so when you submit problem reports to us, we'll actually fix things because we are just as engaged with using our tools as you are. If I deployed things that didn't work and then I had to use them, I would fix them. Guess what? That's how it should be. So. And the same is true of people working on them. What we would like to cultivate is this notion that when you make something, you don't just throw it out the window or over the fence, or you actually get to interact with people who use it. If you were a cook and you made somebody a meal, you would ask them, how is it? And if they said it's delicious, and then they bit into something and it had a bone or a rock, right? If you're eating fish or rice, perhaps. You'd want to know about that, right? You'd say, oh, geez, what happened with my workflow? Where'd that fish come from? I missed a bone, whatever. You'd be interested in how things continue to work, not just that first time, right? Counting installs is great, but does it actually work? Are you able to get to work? Are you able to get to school, to the hospital, to home, to visit your mom, whatever you're doing? That's what public transit is for, right? Are you able to use the app if you don't have a 20/20 vision? Are you able to use it if you're vision impaired? Can you use the accessibility tools on your phone of choice, and do they work for you? Are you able to translate it into a language you speak? Can you provide feedback to us or to RTC? Can you answer some survey questions? Guess what? RTC does a survey every 10 years of their ridership. This is 2023. We can do it every 10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox and kind of wrap this up. It's coming up on 30 minutes. So the value for value model, what is that? If you are at all a fan of No Agenda, the No Agenda podcast, well, we don't have to talk about that. Adam Curry, one of the inventors of podcasting in general, they developed this value for value model, which is actually pretty sensible. So I mentioned that we're a volunteer organization, we're a charity, we're a 501c3 charity, in fact, complete tax deductible public charity, determined in October of 2022, in fact. So we are completely volunteer based. However, as we roll out these things like open transit, and later we'll talk about smart social, and we'll talk about vLocal, and we'll talk about our open data capture platform and our collaboration with Aero AI and some other things, you can support us by saying, hey, this was valuable to me, and I appreciate the time of these volunteers. And you're not donating to me. You know, maybe it's Michael, maybe it's Anton, maybe it's Sanvi, maybe it's other people, as more and more people kind of jump in here. So as people start deploying things that we've been describing and talking about for the last year, hopefully there will be a certain portion of our population, local or visitor or otherwise, who will say, this was actually useful, this was actually valuable. And sure, I'll throw $5 in, or $1 or whatever, or maybe I'll participate. Maybe I'll join a hackathon, or maybe I'll work on a project. By the way, I'm not a coder, but I can be a part of Create for Vegas. These are all good ideas. So when we deploy our transit project, for example, it will fall under our labs deployment. So Innovate for Vegas Labs is kind of an arm's length notion. We can deploy things that are not on a charity platform, like our websites and stuff are all associated with our 501c3, volunteer, whatever. So we're a charity. We don't place ads. We don't, etc. So by deploying these as arm's length, on a for-profit, say, commercial platform, that is still part of our organization, right? So it's we don't have to get into the implementation details, but the fact is it will be a separate organization, connected yet separate, and we can put our applications here as though you could, right? We develop open source tools. So take our open source project and deploy it in your city. So we'll deploy it here. And if you'd like to support the developers who contributed their time in the volunteer efforts, if you'd like to support our organization, if you'd like to hire somebody, we always tell you who worked on what. We don't hide anything. Everybody gets full attribution for their contribution of creative work, code or otherwise. Code4.Vegas, Create4.Vegas, coming soon. So as I say this, so it's April 14th, 2023. So give it another insert time here. And, but there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of projects on deck. There's a lot of things we can address, and the list is growing. The list of people contributing their time and efforts and care is growing more slowly, but we'll hopefully, as things start to become apparent that we can actually affect change, that local innovators can innovate locally and make a difference, and that actually converts into benefit for all, including money in their pocket perhaps, or a job, or certainly something on their resume, maybe something they're actually interested in doing. These are fun, educational, and practical projects that we have. So they may seem like work because they are, but they also have tangible value when you're done. Not a portfolio project. This is an actual city scale undertaking that you can be a part of. However you choose to. Support financially, morally, ethically, or with your creative work and effort. So that's about it. That's a quickie for today, 33 minutes. If you've heard some of the shows that we have a guest on, which there will be more of those, it's tax time, April 18th, fast approaches. So not pressing on people to contribute their time, but there are several people that I'm speaking with now. Hopefully we'll speak to someone about open data from the city. Hopefully we'll speak to somebody about robots that like to destroy each other. Sometime maybe in the future we'll talk with a former colleague of mine from Netscape, and we can talk about how you really build a product for like 25 different platforms before the days of containers and one-click builds. And there are more people. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. But thank you so much for listening, as always. Moving forward, we're going to use an open source platform called eCaster, and I cannot remember the name. It's like Inuicast or something. The website is, this is being recorded locally because it's just me, but we will use a platform that is free for our charity organization, which is cool. And so you'll hear me announce that in the future. And that's all they ask, is that we announce them. So just like I said, the value for value model, if we can get a free service from them and we just have to attribute our benefit to them, right? We are using their tools and we're going to say that's them. And they use open source tools and they attribute, they give attribution to those developers and those companies that offer that stuff for free and open source and whatnot. So the whole model is pretty cool. It doesn't mean you can't or don't pay for things. You can. The fact that we're a charity means we'll get it for free, which is nice. But we are also part of the open source volunteer ecosystem. So it's kind of a, well, some might say it's communist, but we won't have to go there. But it is for the good of all. And there's a lot of upside. And that's why we are doing things the way we are doing. And ideally, those volunteer, one hand washes the other efforts will evolve and emerge. What will emerge is our actual labs deployments. And then from there, who knows, we'll actually create actual, real paying jobs from some of our projects. But that's for another day. I've talked about this before and I'll talk about it again, but not today. Thank you so much for listening again. And this has been Dan Hugo. Today has been, and for a little while longer, will be April 14th, 2023. Ciao.